So, hello and welcome to Inspiring Interviews, Conversations about Breath. This is a show where each week we take a well-known breathwork facilitator and find out what brought them into breathwork. We hear their stories and their inspiration and what helped them step into become the amazing facilitator that they are. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Sapphire from the magical island of Ibiza, who is going to tell us her story. Now, before I do these interviews, I ask my guests, how would they like to be introduced? What would they like to say about themselves? And this is what Sapphire wrote to me. Sapphire was blessed to have been born in Ibiza with Ibizan Canadian parents, and she was completely influenced by the sun, the sand, and the sea of the island, and it had a huge impact on her love of synchronised swimming, for which she competed at the national level. This led her onto a path to yoga, where she practiced for many years around the world and eventually completed her teacher training in India. But it was in Bali, where she went to practice even more yoga, that she stumbled unknowingly upon breathwork. During that first class, Sapphire knew that she had to spread the word and share the magic of this practice. She is dedicated to holding space for others to heal and for transformations to occur within them. So welcome, Sapphire, to our interview show.
Hi there. Hello. Super grateful to be here. Super excited also to share.
Me too, actually. I'm very excited to hear your story because I've known you for 2 or 3 years now, but as often when we do this work, you know people on one level, like on a very deep level, but you don't know maybe some of the details, some of the bits about their life of how they got there. So I'm really excited because I feel like I'm going to be interviewing like a really good friend. Perhaps we could start by taking a breath together.
Yes, of course. That's better.
Yes, definitely. So that was that's a great little introduction. But let's start with some other details about your life. I'm going to give you 1 minute to tell me all about some of the details of Sapphire. Tell me where she lives, what her life looks like. What do you think people should know about you, Sapphire? You have 1 minute. Go.
Okay, so I'm based in Ibiza, as I already said. I grew up here, and then at the age of pretty much 17, I left Canada, and then I traveled for about, I think it was like 9 years, all in all, where I first went to university there. Then that didn't work. Then I went to makeup school, and that worked, but it was another sort of experience. Then I came back to Ibiza. Then I lived in London for a while. Hated that, actually. I'm not a big city girl. Back to Ibiza again. Then I stayed in Germany for a while. I spent some time in Cape Town, back to Canada, back here. So I was chasing myself constantly. I was sort of chasing my own tail. And to this day, I still know that I think I was chasing my own happiness. I didn't really know where I was going. So now I'm fully based in Ibiza, but I move around quite a bit. I've been traveling a lot. I just got back I was in Bali for a month, then I went to Australia for a month. And I sort of move around with the breath. So wherever I get invited to, I go and I come, I go and I come. So I'm a tumbleweed, definitely. Is that
that sounds a really exciting life that you live right now, and I'm really interested to hearing about your Canadian experience because I'm Canadian. I'm a kind of pretend Canadian myself now because I live here. Tell me, what are you like as a person, Sapphire? How would your friends describe you?
Definitely very floaty. I think that's probably, they all describe me as a butterfly. So I'm quite floaty, I'm quite airy. Anything that will keep me away from conflict. I really despise conflict, anything to do with conflict. So just being really calm, easygoing adventure. I love a bit of adventure. I love beauty in things, but again, I have to be in nature. I do have to be in nature. As I said before, cities are not my thing, so I come and I go to them, and I think they have their own speciality. But definitely nature. Yeah, being around people that I love. I love to socialize, but again, I love my own time.
Yeah.
Very easygoing. I sort of go with the flow quite often. For
And
some people, I think, oops,
carry on,
yeah.
sorry.
No, for some people, I think I can be a little bit too floaty. I just sort of go with everything. Try to, yeah, structure. I like structure, but again, I just sort of just float with it. Mega Libra here.
Okay, so I'm really feeling what a free spirit you are, and you know how you can be drawn and excited by things all over the world. What do you like doing when you're not doing yoga and breath work and traveling? What would you be doing at home just to relax?
Definitely with my cats. I'm a massive animal lover, so I'm always with my cats or my horses when I can. I'm out in the countryside or up in the woods. I love the beaches here. Definitely missing a bit of beach time. Yeah, just outdoors, outdoors. As a child, actually, my brother and my sister used to always be either in front of a book or in front of a movie, and I would be outside with my dogs, imagining that they were horses up in a field, making them run around the field. So yeah, that's sort of me. Definitely into being outside in nature and just, yeah, connecting, either making magical potions. I would cut off cactus leaves and make all these concoctions out of them. So that's me.
Really lovely. So, well, you've mentioned little Sapphire already, so I think let's go back to her, and let's go back to little Sapphire running around outside with her brother and her sister, indoors reading and watching movies with your dogs, pretending they're horses and making little potions. Choose a time when you were young and when you were little, and tell us about life. What life was like, about what was life just in general like for little Sapphire then?
So I was brought up in a quite an alternative way. I was the veggie of the school, so I was always a vegetarian as I grew up. So I was always a little bit seen as a little bit the weirdo. Um, on my mum's bookshelves, it was always like woo-woo spiritual books. So I grew up with that alternative style of living. And yeah, as I said before, I grew up in the countryside. I was born at home, a natural birth. Um, I was very much, yeah, influenced by Ibiza's lifestyle back then, which is a little bit different than it is now. And yeah, I was really into being around with my friends. I was always loving an adventure, always wanting to be around people, around family, around my grandmother in her garden, planting her whatever she was growing. I would spend a lot of time with my father's aunt, who was older, and she also lived down the road. So I would go up and down with my bicycle, spend a lot of time at my grandparents' hotel. They owned a little hotel in town. So I was very much used to spending time around people. So I used to love going there and visiting because there was always guests that had returned again, and they knew me since before I was even a little toddler. And yeah, I was very social. I was a very social sort of child that was not embarrassed about anything. I would show up and talk to anyone. And so yeah, that was me. It was really outgoing, again, really free spirited. Yeah.
That sounds an amazing childhood that you're painting, and you know, Ibiza, which is a magical island, and when you were little, surrounded by family, to go on adventures and happy to chat to anyone, and just to love being around in people. That sounds, you know, in my head, it sounds like a really beautiful little picture. So I'm loving hearing about little Sapphire. Now, one of the things that I like to do, I like to hear about the people who have inspired you. So you mentioned there your father's sister, your aunt who's a bit older, and your grandmother. Is there someone who you would consider to be like one of the big influences on your life, or someone who inspired you as a child? It might be them, one of them too, or it could be someone else.
Definitely, my mum has a massive part in all of this, and also my way of living now. So she's definitely a big part of it.
Mm.
I'm very much inspired by her, just the way she brought us up and the way she lives and her healthy lifestyle and very active. And then
Well,
again,
let's bring her in then. Like, what's her name, Sapphire?
Melanie.
Melanie. Tell us all about Melanie then. Tell us about your mum.
Yes. So mum was born and raised in England, actually. And then I think she was 2 when they migrated to Canada. And then, yeah, very crazy story. When she was, well, a few years after they'd moved to Canada, my English grandmother, so her mum, had this pretty wacky dream. She was also quite woo woo. So she had this dream where there was a massive plane crash on a little island called Ibiza. Funnily enough, the next morning when she woke up, this actually happened. So in the 60s, there was a terrible plane crash here in Ibiza. Many people died, and it was on one of the highest mountains of the island. They're not very high. But so the next morning on the radio, when they woke up, my grandfather heard this story. And yeah, then it was already like a pull. There was already a pull for the family to come and visit Ibiza. So a few months later, my grandparents with their 6 children came all the way from Canada to Ibiza. And I think it was only a few days after they got here. They fell madly in love with the island. They decided to move all the 6 children here and start a family without a word of Spanish. They came, I think they moved literally a few months after that. So her story is already quite interesting, how she went from England to Canada, then to Ibiza, then she was sent off to boarding school. I think her childhood wasn't particularly easy. Wasn't well, yeah, it was quite complicated, quite deep. I think big families in those times was pretty not. Anyway, so yeah, she grew up also living a very different lifestyle, very alternative in sort of way. She had a homeschool teacher when they came here, and she had to sort of grow up in this little island they didn't even have phones. So it was very, very different for her. And I think that's where it all started, also with the influence of my grandmother.
Mm.
So that especially the woman lineage in our family is quite woo woo already from what you can hear.
Yeah, that sounds. You come from a line of strong women. It feels like, Sapphire, from your grandmother being really adventurous and moving to Canada and then to Ibiza in the 1960s. I know it was a really undeveloped place then. It's
Mhm.
actually where my parents had their honeymoon when they got married almost 60 years ago, and they stayed in the only hotel in the island in 1960, I think it was.
Perhaps it was the same one that they stayed at. There weren't many.
No, they weren't. And so that's a really interesting story. And what's your mother like as a person? What are the gifts maybe that you think she's given you?
Definitely, I look up to her in that she's been very strong to sort of believe the way she wanted to bring us up and go against the traditional doctors that there were here at the time when I was growing up. I was also hardly vaccinated as a child. So they used to see her as this weird, strange woman that didn't want to vaccine her children, and that the children were vegetarian and that they wouldn't get enough nutrition if they didn't eat meat. And so I look up to her in that she never gave up with her beliefs, and she stayed strong with that. Also, I look up to her in that she has managed to forgive many, many people in her life that really hurt her and still move forward. And that for me is a true inspiration. And also just really showing me, because I think I was probably 13 when I started going already to healers and hypnosis therapy, and we never ever took sort of medication. We were always on homeopathy or special drops or herbal remedies. We never really had any medical stuff in the house unless it was truly necessary. So that's for sure. Although at the time I always used to think, why do I have to be the weirdo? Why do I have to be the one that has like the veggie pasta Tupperware on a children's camp? But now looking back, I'm like, wow, like she used to just was amazing. Also, she really inspired us to stay active. So as a child, that's when she really encouraged us to go swimming. That's where the swimming career started, the synchronized swimming. She used to drive us back and forth. We were 3, so she used to be on the road all afternoon. And each one of us, we had different activities that we would do. And she'd never give up on that. She always wanted us to be choosing whatever we wanted to do. And I would go from the pool to the horses and back and forth. And so, yeah, amazing mom. Definitely.
I really feel that her strength in living what she believed by, and in what was in a world that maybe didn't share all her values. What a tremendous woman she sounds like, and what a tremendous gift that she's given you that strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty incredible.
Well, let's maybe just honor her. Is she still with us? She's still alive.
Yeah, yeah. She's probably somewhere outside meditating too.
Well, let's have a breath with her then, and just to really acknowledge and just be grateful for being such an incredible, strong woman. I really feel her with us. So let's have a breath with her. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving all those gifts to you, Sapphire. So your early childhood does sound pretty idyllic, actually, Sapphire, but there are always challenges. So maybe tell us, what are some of the things that little Sapphire struggled with? Where were the bits that she, where were her edges? Maybe where were the things that she needed to grow, and what did she need to learn?
I was very sensitive as a child. Still to this day, I have certain memories of moments either with little arguments at school or conflicts with people, and that would stay inside of me and really, really, really hurt. So I was very, very sensitive, very delicate in a way. Although I was so outgoing and like very, very active and sparky and out there, I was also very much in need of reassuring constantly. I was very, just really delicate and very, I remember everything used to affect me. And then at the same time, I wasn't able to describe what I was feeling. I always had a really hard time putting things into words. I would have my own tantrum fits because it just wouldn't come out. And still to this day, that's one of my not issues, but I always have a hard time putting everything into words just because I feel so much that, I acknowledge that little one sometimes. I think, shoot, she really had a hard time with that, and everything would affect me much deeper, much more than I think perhaps, well, maybe we all felt that, but me in particular, I think I was very sensitive, very, very sensitive.
I can feel that, Sapphire, and although it's an amazing gift to have as an adult, to be sensitive and to be empathic, it is also sometimes a burden as well, especially when you're little. And you don't know how to handle that. So yeah, I can feel little Sapphire and how that she struggled with that sometimes. So let's just have a breath with that as well. Okay, so yeah, lovely. Let's move on a little bit. Tell us about Sapphire at school, or were there any particular teachers when you were maybe a teenager that really inspired you? It doesn't have to be a teacher, it could be someone else in your family or someone else you know. Is there someone else who you kind of had a really big influence on you?
Yeah, actually, for some reason, another great thing that my mum and my grandmother did was at the time I didn't really particularly like it, but they made us go to private English classes every afternoon because I went to Spanish school as I grew up. So in the afternoons, I used to have these private lessons, and particularly this one teacher, she was called Felicity. And she was also she was like a mad teacher. I can only remember these amazing stories, but through the stories, that's how she used to teach me. So she was also, she was like also a little bit of a witch. She's not with us anymore, bless her. But she was almost like a magician. Anything you asked her, she knew about. And there were these crazy stories. And then she became my art teacher as well as just English. And for some reason, she just popped in the picture now. So she was definitely a big inspiration because she was the one that really helped me to believe that even though I struggled at school, because I wasn't an academic, I used to hate sitting in front of a book. And as I said before, I would always be outside with the dogs, not in front of the TV or a book. So she was always the one that encouraged me and made me believe that I had a different intelligence in a way, that I was smart in my own ways, that I was able to learn just differently. And she used to put like memory exercises for me and test me. And she said, you're incredible. You are very intelligent. So she really, really allowed me to feel that. And still to this day, I remember most of the theories of things just because of her and the way she taught me. So she was a
Uh,
big inspiration for
what did she
sure.
look like, Sapphire? Could you describe her?
Oh, she was magical. She had short cut like hair, very, very straight hair. I think she was actually missing a few teeth here and there. And she was hilarious. She used to smoke cigarettes, as she taught me, like back in the day. And she always used to wear long sort of skirts and had this massive garden and all these crazy stories. And it's just because of the stories that I was able to really concentrate and almost be distracted in a way that I would learn. So yeah, she was a big part of my life. Very, very special.
Well, we definitely need to have a breath with Felicity and all those crazy art teachers and teachers who believe in us and make us believe that we're that we are intelligent, and just because we're different, it doesn't mean that we're not stupid. That those
Exactly.
people believe in us. So let's have a breath with Felicity. Who gave that to you?
Oh. Ah, she was a wonderful woman. Really, really, really. And I don't know how that suddenly she's just here. I haven't thought about her in years. So that was, she's
She
around.
sounds magical with those
Yeah.
stories. Okay, well, let's move on to a bit to teenage Sapphire and tell us about what your life was like then. You obviously were into swimming a lot then, and you were into synchronized swimming. So perhaps tell us with your journey with that.
So even just talking, even the word teenager makes me sort of go, oh. I definitely think that that's the part of my life where I probably had most of my struggles, or most of the struggles started, or the ones that I can actually remember. So during that time, that was definitely when I was, yeah, when I was swimming the most. I used to train ridiculous amount of hours, probably like during the week, 4 to 5 hours every afternoon. And then in summer holidays, it would be like an 8-hour day in and out of the pool constantly. And I think that's really when all the insecurities developed, and um, letting go of my horse, which was a big part of my life, and focusing more on having to go to school and having to really study, because up until then I hadn't really had to put that much effort into it. And yeah, then suddenly all like the body image issues came up. The boys were coming into life, and what about rejection and just insecurities, and ugh, just the thought of teenage years is like ugh, really. And yeah, I think it was, yeah, when I think about it, it's just heavy. It's heavy and cranky. I didn't know what was happening with me. There's just so many changes. Um, that's when also we moved out of my house where I'd grown up and moved to my grandparents' hotel. Then my parents started running that. So they didn't have as much time with us, I think. And deep down inside, I think I was just shouting out for attention in a way, attention to understand everything that was changing, that was happening. And yeah, not so fun. My
Yeah,
childhood, yes, but the teenage years were like, ugh.
I can really feel that, and it's difficult for, I mean, it's difficult for anyone growing up, but for especially for girls who are going through such physical changes, and especially if you're feeling you're a sensitive and empathic little
Yeah.
one, to be able to process all that, and maybe changes in lifestyle where your parents or family who are so close at one point, maybe you know, in a different role,
Hmm.
and finding, and the challenges of, you know, being a sports, you know, sports person with all the swimming. I can really feel that. Really feels like a big confusing time, Sapphire, for you.
And then once I started coming out of my teenage years, I had quite a hard time with the competition, with the swimming so much and keeping up with everything. And then that's when I developed quite a severe case of bulimia, of eating disorder. So I think it was, now looking back and having done all this work on myself, and it was actually when I wrote my final thesis for Alchemy of Breath, where I realized that for so long I felt so much. There was so much inside of me, and I didn't know where to put that. So that's when it all developed into the purging, the binging, the purging, the binging, what to do with all this emotion, what to do with all this stuff inside of me. How
Mm.
do I process it all? How do I digest it? So yeah, that was yeah, I think all that confusion was what started this whole journey.
Well, you've mentioned that. Is it okay to talk about
Oh yeah.
bulimia? So the pressures of swimming, body image, growing up and changing, that led into bulimia. How old were you? If you're okay to tell us about your start, your journey
Oh,
through bulimia, tell us how that all started and where it led to.
so super super open about my journey with bulimia, just because I see it as such a gift now. I see it as such a blessing in a way, even though it was one of the darkest phases of my life and most challenging. It was definitely, well, it started, I think it was, now looking back and when I've done this work, I realized that it was the void once I stopped competing. Suddenly, when I didn't have, what do I do with all this time? I had so much focus and so much control on training every day and competing and having like very structured lifestyle, to suddenly there was this, oh, I'm not going to swim anymore. Also, my final national competition, I got really bad food poisoning, and I was in for the solo, the duet. I was in for everything, and I had so much pressure on me. And then that was when I got really sick, and I wasn't able to even dive in the pool that day. And I remember my whole team sort of looked at me like, "Really? You're going to let us down because you're sick?" And yet I couldn't even stand up. I was so ill. So that was a big sort of, yeah, it was a big stab in a way. It was like, ugh, it really, really affected me, the fact that I'd let down my whole team. But then also that void that comes after competing. Suddenly there's this, and now what? There's this emptiness, there's this space. And at that same time was when, yeah, of course, my whole body was changing. Several times I had been told by my coaches that, oh, you shouldn't be eating so many desserts, or pinching my belly and saying you should control yourself a bit more. And the worst thing that you can really do to a teenage woman. And so, yeah, that's really started to develop, as well as this little me inside of me that was changing so rapidly, so quickly. And I just didn't know where I was at. There was so much to feel into. And yet, I didn't know how to digest the emotions. I didn't know what to do with myself. And it was finding control. It was, again, another way of just finding total control over what I ate, how I ate, how many times did I throw up. It was very much controlled, um, controlling myself ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, I can really feel that journey from. Yeah, I can really feel her, actually. That confusion of, you know, having an emptiness and the pain of letting teammates down, and then the need for control. Yeah. How old were you at this point?
So I was about 16, 15, 16, because I left to Canada at 17. So yeah, my last years, it was around 15 when it really started to kick off.
Okay. And maybe talk us through the rest of your journey with bulimia. And just I just want to acknowledge, by the way, that this is really important to hear. You know, for people watching this, if you know anyone who's studied, who has suffered from bulimia, is really inspiring. And thank you so much for being willing to be open about this and to talk about your journey. It's so refreshing to hear someone just be so open about it. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then tell us what happened with your journey through bulimia then, you know, as a 15, 16-year-old, and then moving over to Canada as well.
Yeah, so then I left to university, and that was all quite exciting at the time. And again, I was leaving my massive group of friends here in Ibiza. It was a very exciting time, even though I had this underlying bulimia that no one knew about, because at this point, no one knew. It was a big secret. Life was really exciting. There was a lot of partying going on, Ibiza summertime. My parents owned a hotel, so it was very exciting, very sort of adventurous life at that point. And so then I left to Vancouver Island. I went to the University of Victoria. And I remember the first month was incredible. It was, oh my gosh, so many boys, there's so many like parties and new things, and oh my goodness, it was wonderful. And then suddenly it started to sort of go downhill. And then I started to realize that I actually felt really lonely. I actually felt very, very lonely and very, very far away from my family, from my friends. Suddenly living in this little res room by myself, and that's when really I was eating, emotionally eating. I just remember stuffing my face night after night, and then like it was just this massive pressure. So there it was quite, yeah, it wasn't so great. But I sort of again kept it really quiet. No one really knew about it. It was always this whole hiding. It was this massive secret. Food in the room. No one could see me. No one knew how I was. No one really knew my past, so it could be a secret. So then I did a year at uni, and that was okay, but I didn't really have a direction. I didn't really know why I was there. I just got accepted into this amazing university, and I was just like, okay, fine, I'll do random courses. So then again, I went back to Ibiza after that first year. I would always return to Ibiza in the summers because it was so exciting. And then I finally moved again back to Vancouver to go to makeup school. And at the time I had my first sort of official boyfriend, who was drop dead gorgeous, very, very gorgeous guy. And he turned out to be pretty toxic, actually, and very controlling in also what I ate and judging my figure and, oh my gosh, you look like this and that. And so again, there was that more pressure, more pressure, more pressure. Then at the same time, my parents were going through pretty bad time with their marriage. And a few weeks after that, I found out that this first boyfriend, I actually saw him physically cheating on me. So that ripped me apart again. And then that sort of brought up a whole new level of self-hatred in a way. I'm blaming myself for not being good enough. Again, the whole controlling thing, again, wanting the attention somehow. But by this time, I had already picked up the phone and I had already called my mum, because I got to the point where I got really sick. Like I started having, my throat would start bleeding. It was really hardcore, like not pleasant at all, but that's how open I am with this whole journey. So physically I was going downhill. I couldn't really keep up with makeup school. I felt dreadful. I developed a really bad kidney disease. Was it kidney something disease or something sort of not nice. So I came back home and I spent a few months back here in Ibiza trying to sort of recover. I thought I was fine being home. Everything is safe. It's okay. Then I decided to go back to Canada to finish my makeup degree, which I did. but everything sort of fell apart. And again, it became a little bit of a secret. But that's when yoga came into my life. And that's when I started to practice yoga. And I found that yoga was helping. It was helping to relieve something. At the beginning, I did find it a little bit boring, but then suddenly I could find peace on the mat. So it was like little day by day, I could find a little bit of peace. But the eating disorder still was there. It's a very, very long process. And at the same time, I already started teaching synchronized swimming to little girls. So I was this sort of teacher incorporating a bit of yoga with my girls and developing this incredible passion to teach. But I knew that I had something different. There was a different connection with these girls just because myself, I'd been through that whole competition lifestyle. So they used to see me as almost a little bit the wacky teacher, the little bit different one. I would make them do all these different yoga poses and breathing techniques. And so without even me realizing, I was already developing this passion to teach. And at the same time, it was helping me. So yeah, then the whole eating, it sort of came in waves after that. Suddenly I would be obsessed with working out, and suddenly I would be like working out for hours off day, like, and then other days it would be really bad, and it would sort of come and it would go. But at the same time, the yoga was really taking off. The yoga was every time a little bit more. So then I fell madly in love with my second boyfriend, and that really helped. But again, it was a plaster, or sort of a plaster on top of everything that was actually going on. And it eased out for a bit. That's when I moved to Germany with him. I spent some time in South Africa. We did quite a bit of traveling. And yeah, to the point where suddenly I knew that I had something else to discover. I had something else to discover about myself and my journey. And it just couldn't really happen with him. So we ended up breaking up. And I think that was when it all started, when my true recovery journey started, and when I decided to take it to the next level.
Well, that's a really powerful story there. Really powerful. Thank you again for going to those places. Yeah, I love the image of you, even at a young age, being that crazy inspirational teacher for your little girls, teaching them synchronized swimming, by the way.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I really did.
Yeah.
I'm inspired by children in general, but if like being able to combine the swimming with something a little bit different. I always remember I was so different to the other teachers that were like, come on, in the water now. I was strict in my own ways, but they would laugh at me at the same time. It was more fun. It was incorporating fun and something a bit different for them.
Well,
And also teaching them again how to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
Like little techniques of telling the girls that I can do this with a little mantra in their minds whilst they did the exercise, and then their faces when they come out of the water and they said, Safi, I did it. I said, you see, it's all up here. You can do it. So different things like that is what I really enjoyed of teaching.
Oh, what lucky little girls, you know, to do that and to have you. And teachers, no one ever remembers what teachers teach you. They remember how their teachers made them feel.
Yeah.
And it seems like you had a gift to make those girls feel so special, and they will remember that. Maybe sometime someone will interview them and they'll be taking a breath with you.
Yeah.
But your journey through bulimia and your journey through self-discovery as well, you seem remarkably self-aware, even at that age, that you knew something wasn't wrong and that you would need to go on a journey to kind of heal yourself. And the journey of discovering slowly through yoga is one that I'm familiar with. Like at first it's just a few minutes of peace, or at first you don't like it at all, and it's, what am I doing this for in this room? I don't know. And then suddenly, you know, you find just a little bit of peace on the mat, and then further and further it draws something out of you and reveals something about you, and it starts a process. So I'm really familiar with that process, and I'm sure many people are, about how that starts. So there you've done already, even at a young age, you've had some big experiences moving to Canada, twice to Vancouver Island, um, to university and then to makeup school, back to Ibiza, to Germany and then South Africa, um, with your boyfriend. Tell us what happened next, Sapphire. Where did your journey of, of self-discovery start when you really let go of the plaster? I love that your description of your boyfriend being like a plaster. But
Mm-hmm.
then tell us what happened when you ripped that plaster off and you really started to do the work.
So once I'd broken up with him, then I was in a good place. I wasn't in a bad place, but it was still this sort of obsession, sort of a very big contrast between the obsession and the freedom. So there was this back and forth, back and forth. And at the time, I was working in a very fun Dutch luxury sort of cosmetic company on Ibiza, and I had a lot of fun because the people I worked with were incredible. And it was that winter that I decided to take my first sort of journey, and I went to Thailand and I went to Bali for the first time for a month with my backpack. I was really scared shitless, really. I traveled a lot by then, but I'd never gone to sort of a different culture by myself. And I remember getting off the plane in Chiang Mai in Thailand and thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And that's pretty much when it really all started. It was suddenly this hunger for discovering more adventure on a different level, and discovering new yoga teachers and new styles, and discovering what I wanted to do that day. What was I even going to do that day? I'd never had a plan. Again, I was so floaty, and I am always so floaty when I travel. I never really have a plan of where I'm going. And so I was meant to only go to Thailand. And then again, because of a boy, I decided to go to Bali, and didn't realize that I fell madly in love with Bali, not the boy. So that's really when I started to going to all these, how Bali is this incredible place to discover yourself, especially as a young woman. I think it's a very safe place to go and discover all these different techniques of healing and meditation and more yoga and ecstatic dance. And there's all these new things in my life. So after I'd returned back from that trip, I knew that I wanted to do some sort of a yoga training. I knew that I was going deeper into that, into the healing side, into self-discovery. And then I ended up changing career again. I started working at a yacht rental company as a commercial director, working my ass off, literally, no day off for 6 months. And I made a lot of money. And by the end of that season, I thought, okay, fine. I'm going to book my tickets, and I'm doing the round the world trip by myself. And in that trip, I'm going to stop off at various places. But here I'm fast forwarding a bit too much because I want to make note of that summer when I was working at the boats. I went through a major burnout again, too much work, too chaotic. Then also my roommate, she unexpectedly died. She was killed on the road, and it was a very tragic accident that happened. So that really stirred a lot of stuff inside of me that summer. So by the end of the summer, I was really much in need of sort of like a total reset. And out of nowhere, or they say that it comes to you, I was invited to go on a Kambo ceremony, the frog medicine ceremony. And then a few days later, I did the Sapo ceremony, which is a little bit stronger. To this point, I'd never taken any psychedelics, any drugs. I was sort of a total virgin in that sense. And season had finished, and I went ahead and did this ceremony. And I think it blew me apart in many ways. It blew me wide open, but also I was a little bit cuckoo after that. I remember even my sister, who's a doctor, she's going, why are you doing that? You're crazy. You're putting venom into your body. So for the few weeks after, I remember sort of feeling a bit floaty. Where am I going? Oh my gosh, I've got 6 months of travel ahead of me, thank God, to integrate this whole process. And I started off my travels in Holland. And then from Holland, I went to Canada. I spent a month in Canada with my family over Christmas. Then from Canada, I went to Thailand. And then from Thailand, I went to India. That's when I completed my yoga training. And then from India, I flew to Bali. And when I was in Bali, the whole idea was to go to Bali Spirit Festival. So I get to the festival the first day, and suddenly I could feel my friend who had passed right with me, because she wanted to come to the Bali Spirit Festival the day that I'd bought my ticket. She said, I'm coming with you the next time. So when I get to the festival, I just could feel her almost like skipping around me. And I had already planned a bunch of different yoga classes that I wanted to take. And I got introduced to a girl, and she said, oh, have you not tried breathwork? I said, no, I haven't. I'm just here for the yoga, breathwork, whatever. So day one of the Bali Spirit Festival, was this 2016, I think? Yeah. I go to my 2-hour yin yoga class in the morning, which was amazing. I come out of the class and I was going towards my Kundalini class. And as I was leaving this yin yoga class to go to this Kundalini, I honestly felt as if someone was pulling me back into the tent and saying, no, you're supposed to stay in here. And I was like, come on, Bali, because I always get really tested when I'm in Bali. I said, come on, like, I just want to go to my yoga class. And then I bumped into a few people and they're like, what, you're leaving? You need to stay. This is breath work and it's with Dana and Ashana. You have to try it. So finally I was like, okay, whatever, I surrender, I will stay. So we started off the class dancing away, and it was this whole sort of ecstatic dance, release, free, blah, blah, blah. And into our first minute of breath, and I have this ridiculous sort of explosion session, one of these mad, incredible experiences where, yeah, just a bomb of energy throughout my whole body. Explosion of light, everything was buzzing, my eyes were rolling back, I was screaming my head off. And during the whole process, my friend who had passed was holding my hand. She was just reassuring me at all times, this is okay, this is what you're meant to do, this is what you're meant to do. So as I came out of the session, I was completely in shock, but also in shock of finally finding the place where I always knew that I could get to with healing. Very similar to the frog medicine, but fully embodied. That's what I really enjoyed of the session, is that I could feel my body, that I wasn't out of it, that I was fully connecting with myself as I was experiencing it. So during the rest of the week, I went to every single breathwork class of the Bali Spirit Festival. I met Giten, I met Anthony, I met Amy. I was so inspired, and every time I came out of a session, again, I would receive this message of, this is what you're meant to do, this is what you're meant to do. And by the last day of the festival, I remember we were doing an exercise, a shamanic exercise on manifestation. And we were literally in the grass, and I was pounding the grass with my hands and putting my forehead, and really, they do call me the manifestation queen because I love to manifest things, but this was like next level. And I thought, okay, there are a bunch of trainings that I can take now, but I had no money. I'd been traveling for 7 months. I had no money left in my account. I thought, how am I going to do this? But I remember just saying, okay, fine, universe, if this is really what I'm meant to do, I'm just going to fully surrender and let universe take over. So by the end of that day, I jumped on my scooter, feeling absolutely amazing after these 5 days of festival, of dancing and breathing and moving. And I was driving out of the festival, and suddenly I had this incredible shiver down my whole right shoulder. And I knew that it was my friend. It was the way that I used to sort of communicate with her, the way that I could feel her around me. And I just felt this shiver, and her voice, she said, Saf, you need to contact my parents. They're going to help you. And I thought, come on. I even laughed. I was like, come on, Ellie, you can't make me do this. And she said, yeah, just ask them. They're going to help you financially. So I jumped again on the scooter, drove all the way back to my homestay, and I did a little meditation, and I called her and I said, okay, please just help me, because I'm writing to some people who I hardly know, asking them for a big chunk of money to do a training. So I sat down and I wrote this massive long email on Facebook. Actually, I wrote to my dear friend's mother, explaining everything that had happened. And about 10 minutes later, she wrote back and she said, wow, she said, Saf, I've been thinking about you. I kept meaning to contact you, but I knew that you were in Bali. I didn't want to interrupt your trip. She said, please book yourself into any training that you need. You are financially covered. I want you to do this because we know that she's coming through you. We know that you need to do this and that you are called. So in less than 24 hours, I was on a plane to Kuala Lumpur to extend my visa. I was booking myself into Clarity of Breathwork training, and I was changing my whole plans to go into this breathwork training. So yeah, that was my first experience of breathwork and how it's guided me in that direction.
Let's just take a breath there,
I'm
Sapphire.
really excited when I talk about this, so yeah.
Let's take a breath for that.
Ooh.
So that gave me shivers down my spine hearing that story. You tell it with such eloquence and such power. Can I just bring in your friend here who passed and who sent you that message? I think really she needs to be acknowledged here as a big part of your journey.
Absolutely. And still to this day, I know that she's with me every single time I go into a session. Her biggest dream was to become a healer. So I know that she comes through me. I know that she's around me. I know that I'm in this 100% because of her.
And what was her name?
Ellie.
Ellie. Can you describe what Ellie looks like for us?
Oh, she's a sweetheart. She's like a fairy. She's literally, she was a fairy in a human body. Very delicate, very light, very floaty. She would spend hours in her room painting these beautiful, magnificent pieces of art. Also her speech was very light. She had nothing of aggression in her. Very, very magical person.
Ellie,
She was almost not human. She was so much an embodiment of pure light and magic, literally.
Ellie the fairy, an embodiment of light and magic. Let's just really, really honor her with a breath.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, I can feel her as well, Sapphire. And what an amazing friend or partner or a guide or a sister to have with you still. And I really believe that she is, with you still. So that's an incredible adventure. I don't feel like I need to ask you any questions about that. You told that so powerfully about how you were called to do yoga, from burnout to, being called to be a healer, to how the universe just pulled you in a direction to find this. And it was almost not like a conscious choice on your behalf. You were chosen to do this. You were called to do this, and you didn't have the choice to say no. So what happened after you did your first training? What was that? Tell us about the training first with Dana and Ashana, and then tell us what happened.
Yeah, the training was just, wow, incredible. But also, again, hard. These trainings are hard because you dive deep within your own healing journey. You dive and you discover really dark places, and healing is not an easy thing. It's discovering painful memories and letting go of patterns and layers. And yeah, it was intense. It was very draining. It was on so many levels, and already Bali is a place that really encourages that. So it was really potent. And I remember finishing up and coming back to Ibiza, sort of like, whoa, what just happened? I needed some time to integrate. And at the time, I was teaching at the body camp, which is one of the main retreats where I teach at. And I was just doing some yoga there. I was teaching yoga. And the osteopath from the retreat recommended breathwork with me. But actually, before that, I got called. Someone called me because they knew that I'd done some breathwork. And they'd invited me to do a breathwork at a festival here in Ibiza. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, sure. I've never guided a group by myself, but okay, whatever. The day of the festival came, and nobody sort of came to the tent of the breathwork at the beginning. There was no one there. And then suddenly I had like 45 people show up. The first time I've ever done a breathwork circle, and it was incredible. And I remember my whole body was buzzing by the time it finished. I thought, wow, this is incredible. And people were just looking at me like, my gosh, this is amazing. What did you do? It's like, I didn't do anything. I'm only guiding you. I'm only sort of holding the space for you to discover these places within yourself. So that was already like a little bit of a sign. And then the osteopath of this retreat recommended my sessions to the director of the retreat. And again, I was like, oh gosh, I haven't really done much of this, but yeah, sure, fine. They loved it. And then I got booked weekly to do breathworks there, like 25 people every week. So already suddenly this journey was really taking off, and I was just learning as I went too. Like I was discovering what this was about and putting all the little pieces together as I taught. And during that whole time, that's when I was also working for Anthony and Amy, and discovering more layers of now alchemy of breath and incorporating a bit more of alchemy technique. And then I got gifted the alchemy training, which again was something like, what? Like, how come do I deserve this? How does this happen? And to this day, I know, even at the beginning, I sometimes thought, well, I can't handle this. I don't want to do this. This is too much. It's too intense. Like people really going through really dark places in breathwork, and it's intense to hold the space. And I kept thinking, no, no, no. And the more I tried to run away from it, the more it kept coming, and the more opportunities kept popping up, and people kept calling me to do breathwork. And so I finally sort of surrendered, and here I am now, and I'm sort of traveling the world teaching breath and holding space for wherever. I just sort of, I think the retreat really helps to expand my sort of contacts and my how would you say, it's sort of like this web.
Mm-hmm.
And from there I've met incredible people that have then invited me to London to teach in London, massive groups, and just more and more. And it's just, wow. Sometimes I think, what? Like, how come this is this really my job? How do I even get paid to do this? This is amazing. It fills my heart so much, and I love what I do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps sort of going deeper, and I'm discovering more parts of the breath and more passion towards it. And I always say that I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission, and I'm just trying to get as many people to even once try it, see what they feel. Perhaps it's not for them, but just try it. And I'm on that mission to just explore and expand as much as possible, and try and get people to connect a little bit deeper within themselves through this incredible tool that we have. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Well, it sounds like the universe definitely has a plan for you, Sapphire. It knows what it's doing with you.
Apparently. Apparently. Sometimes I'm like, what? Where am I going next? What is this happening? But it's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, when the path is easy and you know you're doing it right.
I guess so. And I hope so. I put a lot of effort and a lot of passion into it. a lot.
I can feel that. Are there any other teachers that you would like to just acknowledge or to just to bring in into this space so we can have a breath with them?
Yeah, well, my main teachers, I've always said, I think Dana, Ashana, and Anthony are sort of, I remember even in that first experience of breath, someone kept telling me, open your eyes, and there was Dana looking at me. And for me, I think Dana represents that first magical experience of breath, and then along the way have come more teachers. And now I'm also incorporating a little bit more of somatic breath work with a dear therapist here from Ibiza called Taya, and just discovering more different things that I can incorporate. But for sure, Dana, Ashana, and Anthony are high up there.
Dana, Ashana, and Anthony, who have opened your eyes to breath work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, let's have a breath with them.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've been talking for over an hour already, Sapphire. So this is what your life looks now, and it looks like traveling around the world, helping people breathe, helping people connect. That sounds like following your passion, following your heart, and doing what the universe required you to do. That's an amazing space to be in, and to bringing the healing and transformative power of breath out to people who need it. I really bow down to how you surrendered to what needed to happen for you, because not everyone does. Many people fight, and it never leads anywhere. So that sounds.
I remember in one of the Ibiza breath camps, and I remember being in a circle with my fellow breathwork practitioners, and I think I was in bits. I was in absolute bits, and going through a very painful sort of healing and journey, and lots of stuff was coming out. And then the one thing that I'll never forget saying and discovering in that moment was the depth of this healing, and the depth of sort of the amount of emotion that I had to feel was just the reflection of the amount of people that I want to help.
You know what? I think I was there actually, Sapphire, because that is one of the things that I say now.
Yeah.
The depth of
so now I understand
that you give and bring out to the world.
Thank you.
Well, okay. So I've got two more things to do with you, I think, before we start to wrap up. One of the things I like to do is to offer a breathwork facilitator, if there's a little breathwork that they would like, 2 or 3 minute breathwork or breath technique or breath pattern they would just like to share for anyone who does watch this video. And then I've got one more question to finish with. How does that sound? Do you have a favorite little breath technique that you would like to share?
One that I've discovered lately, especially when I'm nervous, and even before this podcast, I was like, ooh, I felt really tingly. And I love to keep the breaths really long. And I love to breathe in and out through the left with a very long exhale through the left. And that, for some reason, just pulls me right back into my body, calms my system down completely. And if only I would have known that before my synchronized swimming shows, I might have been Spanish national champion.
Could you?
So that's definitely one of my favorites.
Amazing. Oh, could you lead in doing that for a few minutes, a couple of minutes maybe?
Yeah, of course.
Amazing.
So I like to just sit up nice and comfortably, and I actually do it before some of the big breathworks that I have. And then when you're ready, just closing the eyes. And just feeling your breath wherever you're at right now. Don't do anything with it, just feel it in the body. How does it feel? Where does it access? And then when you feel pulled, when you feel cold, I'd like you to just close the mouth and find the breath in and out through the nose. And keeping it really soft, really mellow, very gentle. Really feeling that softness of breath as it comes in and out. I like to place my right thumb just above the right bridge of the right nostril. So you're not actually fully covering it. So you're focusing on this deep breath in and out through that left side, but you're keeping the exhales really long. And as you breathe like that, I like to bring the attention down. I like to really ground into the body, letting go of any tension in the shoulders, and keeping that exhale really long, very subtle. And I don't do this for very, very long, just perhaps like a minute, just keeping it very fluid, very continuous, and very soft. That's it. And final few here. And when you're ready, just dropping that right arm and finding the breath in and out through the nose. And now incorporating an exhale through the mouth when you feel ready and when you feel pulled.
Yeah. I can definitely feel that, Sapphire. I can feel how grounding and calming that is. I shall definitely practice that before I do some synchronized swimming.
Don't forget the nose plug, it'll be hard.
So just one final question. We've heard about your journey, and that's a really inspiring story, and your teachers who inspired you, and your friends and your family. What would you like to inspire in others, Sapphire? If there was something that you could give to people, if there was something that you could, some way that you could inspire them, what is the gifts? What is it that you would really like to inspire in other people?
I would love to inspire other people by them being able to fully express their inner freedom. So what I mean by that is that people can feel free to express their power that each and every one of us carry and express it naturally. So no shying, no controlling, no forcing into a little box, but really embodying that power that we all carry. And that's really where I'm at right now, is that I don't particularly necessarily need to heal people, but what if I could give them inspiration or guidance to become a little bit closer to that freedom inside of them, getting out of the mind. So giving them that space of mind to truly live the life that they want to live in their power and call back their power. And not be living by the mind chatter or the dark voices or whatever's pulling them down. And whatever it takes for them to get there is how I would love to help and inspire.
Amazing. Helping people find that freedom to step into their power, to find that space and that easy where they can truly heal by themselves. That's an incredible thing to inspire in people, Sapphire. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. If people would like to find out more about you or connect with you, how should they do that?
I think mostly Instagram is where I'm at, like with information about events or sessions that I guide. Instagram would probably be the broadest. Facebook is also possible, or even by email, by phone. As I always tell my breathers, please stay in touch. Like really just pick up pick up the phone and call me. I'm always happy to chat and yeah, inspire however I can, if I can, of course. But Instagram is definitely where it's happening more than any other place.
I agree. Actually, out of all the breath workers I follow, I think you have the coolest pictures on Instagram, without a question.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this hour, Sapphire. It's a real gift to hear your journey. It is inspiring, and for people who are watching this, who, if they're not a sensitive, empathic young woman going through this, they may know someone who is going through that. And to see your strength, how you have stepped into your authority and your power with grace and helping others do the same, is really inspiring for me. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Benedict. And I always love chatting to you. It makes it so much easier and so much flow. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you on the next inspiring interviews, where we'll be talking to someone else about breathwork.